to the next item of business, which is a statement by Alistair Allen on greenhouse gas emissions statistics 2023. The Minister will take questions at the end of his statement, and hence there should be no interventions or interruptions. And I call on Minister Alistair Allen. Up to 10 minutes, please. Thank you.
Presiding Officer, Scotland's climate is changing. Severe weather events are becoming more frequent, and we can expect future changes in climate to be far worse than anything we've seen in the past. Global emissions continue to rise, and the locked-in impact of past emissions continues to play out in front of our eyes. We've just experienced the 10 warmest years on record, and the World Meteorological Organization warns that there is no sign of respite over the coming years, and there will be a growing negative impact on our economies, our daily lives, our ecosystems and our planet in the coming years. We are seeing the effects on our own doorstep. The effects of flooding, coastal erosion, drought and storms are putting increasing pressures on our economy, society and our environment. And that's why tackling the climate emergency is a priority for this government and must remain high on the agenda of this Parliament. And so I'm here today to update Parliament on Scotland's latest progress in emissions reduction through the Scottish Greenhouse Gas Emissions Statistics 2023, which were published on the 10th of June. These statistics are the first emissions reduction figures published since Scotland moved to a 5-year carbon budget approach last year. As part of this, the Scottish Government will continue to monitor our climate progress annually, including reporting on our rate of emissions reduction, but our path to net zero in 2045 will be expressed as these new carbon budgets, which we are setting out in due course. Official statistics published on Tuesday show that Scottish emissions in 2023 were 51.3% lower than in 1990. This is a further reduction of 1.9% on our position in 2022. Using comparable metrics, we can see Scotland has made the largest reduction in emissions in the UK, of any country in the UK, between 1990 and 2023, reducing by 51.3%. Emissions in England reduced by 50.7%, followed by Wales and Northern Ireland. The majority of sectors saw reductions in 2023. In particular, there was a very large reduction in emissions in the electricity sector, of 0.8 megatons of carbon dioxide emitted. While electricity was historically the biggest contributor to Scotland's emissions, Scotland has made significant progress decarbonising here, outpacing other UK nations with a 93.4% reduction in these emissions since 1990. This reflects the continued shift from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Over 12 months, renewable electricity capacity increased from 15.4 gigawatts to 17.6 gigawatts by the end of 2024, while gas-fired electricity generation has fallen. Reductions were also seen in fuel supply, buildings and product uses, domestic transport, industry and waste, which all reduced emissions by 0.1 megatons of carbon dioxide when compared to 2022. Agriculture emissions were essentially unchanged between 2022 and 2023, falling very slightly by 0.1%, but our focus on progress here remains strong. We all agree that Scotland's agriculture has a critical role, both in supporting our climate ambitions and ensuring our food security and economic prosperity in future. Indeed, our commitment to rooting our climate ambitions in just transition principles for this sector is undaunted. It underpins a considered, collaborative and clear approach to supporting agriculture's contribution both to Scotland's economic and social vitality at the same time as addressing the climate and biodiversity crises. Lastly, there was some increase in emissions from international aviation and shipping, effectively returning to their pre-COVID levels, and land use change and forestry was a category where there was a reduction it was a result of the forestry sink and the historical planting reaching maturity. Presiding Officer, we are taking decisive action to to ensure that we continue to reduce emissions and make meaningful progress towards our goal of net zero by 2045. And we are committed to doing this in a way that is just for workers, communities and businesses across Scotland, providing a greener, fairer future for all and putting more money in people's pockets, as well as contributing to our overall health and well-being. Presiding Officer, it's been a privilege to be an acting minister in the Scottish Government for the last year, so I hope the Chamber will permit me to look back a little for a moment at some of the things in the last 4 years that the climate change plan has achieved since it was finalised. So we have scrapped peak rail fares for good, extended free bus travel, which now benefits over 2.3 million people, delivered 6,800 public charge points with a further 6,000 additional such charge points by 2030, brought the new build heat standard into force, introduced a ban on the supply and manufacturing of certain problematic single-use plastic items, including single-use cutlery, food containers and more, brought forward the landmark Circular Economy Scotland Act, which establishes the legislative framework to support Scotland's transition to a zero-waste and circular economy. This is complemented by our Circular Economy and Waste Route Map to 2030, helping us to achieve our sustainable resource and climate goals. Since 2020-21, an average of 11,000 hectares of new woodland have been created each year, including over 15,000 hectares in 2023-24, the highest for some 34 years. Since 2020-21, we have restored over 43,000 hectares of degraded peat. This included 14,860 hectares in 2024-25 against the Programme for Government commitment of 10,000. We have published the Vision for Agriculture and passed the Agriculture and Rural Communities Scotland Act 2024, which provides the powers required to deliver the agricultural reform programme, and we have launched a new bidding round worth up to £8.5 million for the Just Transition Fund for 25-26, driving forward our transition to net zero in the North East and Moray, ensuring we continue to create jobs, support innovation and secure the highly skilled workforce of the future. And more recently, we have already delivered on our commitment to ban the supply and sale of single-use vapes. Further commitments will see the extension of our Nature Restoration Fund and establishing of statutory targets to improve biodiversity and the introduction of our Heat and Buildings Bill by the end of this parliamentary term. Despite the progress that we have made, we need others to act too on this shared ambition. We do rely on the UK Government to act in several important areas to enable our future pathway to reduce emissions in Scotland. Carbon capture, utilisation and storage is vital for a just transition to net zero. The Climate Change Committee has advised that they cannot see a route to net zero that does not include carbon capture and storage. The UK Government spending review published yesterday provided some welcome support for the ACORN project. However, a commitment to providing funding is not enough, and we urgently need the UK Government now to commit to providing a full funding package and the timeline so that this project can progress towards reality, creating jobs and investing in our communities. Presiding Officer, we will soon be setting out our proposed emissions trajectory to 2045, based on 5-year carbon budgets through secondary legislation. Key to that has been the Climate Change Committee's advice on Scotland's pathway to net zero in 2045, published on the 21st of May. We are carefully considering the committee's advice before bringing forward regulations to set our carbon budgets. This includes consideration of the target-setting criteria set out under the Act and an assessment of whether the pace of decarbonisation is appropriate for people, sectors and businesses around Scotland. The carbon budgets we propose will provide an achievable pathway to net zero in 2045 that will be followed by a new draft climate change plan outlining our policies and proposals for reducing emissions between 2026 and 2040 for consultation. Presiding Officer, in conclusion, Scotland since 1990, our emissions have halved. The 2023 statistics, which show a reduction since 2022, demonstrate the positive action we have already taken to reach our goal of net zero by 2045, and the actions we have committed to show that we are resolutely focused on achieving this.
Thank you, Minister. The Minister will now take questions on the issues raised in his statement. I intend to allow around 20 minutes for that, after which time we will move on to the next item of business. It would be helpful if those members who would wish to ask a question were to press the request to speak button, and I call Douglas Lumsden.
Thank you, President Officer, and I thank the Minister for advance sight of his statement, a statement of more failure from this devolved SNP government. But of course, this Scottish Government rewards failure. Just look at the promotion of the Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy, who has presided over a long list of failures. A Cabinet Secretary who has failed to publish a climate change plan, failed to publish an energy strategy, failed to publish a just transition plan, failed to meet community groups who are concerned with pylons and substations carpeting their communities, failed to publish carbon budget regulations when they said that they would be published, failed to protect thousands of jobs in the North Sea oil and gas industry from being lost, failed to prevent the closure of refining at Grangemouth, failed to back Rosebank, Cambo or Jackdaw, failed to remove the presumption against new oil and gas. And of course, today we have heard of failure to meet their own emissions targets. So can I ask the Minister, when it comes to the long list of failures, what have I missed?
Minister.
I'll tell the member what he's missed. The member, apart from missing concepts like decency and manners, has missed out on the great issue facing our world today, which he seems to overlook, which is the need to get to net zero. He seems to think, and this will just be my parting word to him, he seems to think somehow we can get through the next 50 years without attempting to get to net zero, and that's what he's missed.
I call Sarah Boyack.
Can I thank the Minister for advance notice of his statement? Minister, environmental groups like WWF say progress has stalled. The evidence of this government's net zero efforts is lacking. The bold climate targets which the SNP pledged to deliver have all but disappeared, and we can see these failures again, but not the acknowledgement of the need to do way more and learn from failures to deliver the action that this Parliament supported. So what are we going to get for the transformational change we need? Addressing transport emissions needs more than dumping peak rail fares, however much that was something we campaigned for. We need to accelerate electrification, we need to see increased rail freight, we need to see buses that people can actually use their bus passes on, and buses built in Scotland by Scottish workers, not imported from China. And shouldn't we be doing more to use our fantastic natural resources to remove carbon, not emit carbon? So when are we going to see the right trees in the right place and the investment to support our peatlands at the scale needed? So finally, will the Minister outline new specific actions the Scottish Government will deliver to ensure the next set of statistics actually are showing us that we are on track to deliver the net zero change we urgently need? Minister.
Well, the member rightly points to the importance, firstly, amongst other things, of tackling carbon emissions in the transport sector. And I can point to many areas of activity. She points to one herself, the abolition of peak fares on trains. But the Scottish Government recognises that the transport sector needs to do much more and to do so in a fair way. The emission statistics that she refers to do point to the fact that the car remains the single largest contribution to transport emissions in Scotland, accounting to 5 megatons of transport local emissions, including international aviation and shipping. These are areas that I'm sure future ministers and indeed this Parliament as a whole will want to work together on. We need to invest, and we are investing in our public transport system.
I call Marie McNair to be followed by Maurice Golden. Ms McNair.
Thank you, President Officer. The Scottish Government has now adopted a cabinet budgeting system to measure emission reduction targets alongside the rest of the UK and international counterparts such as France and Japan. Can the Minister say any more about the lessons learned from the use of the cabinet budgeting systems in these countries and how they have informed the Scottish Government's approach?
Minister.
As we've certainly seen in recent years, not least during COVID, annual emissions targets are highly vulnerable to in-year fluctuations such as cold winters or indeed global pandemics. That doesn't mean we're not going to produce annual figures. We are doing, and I've just outlined them to Parliament. But multi-year carbon budgets provide a more reliable framework for sustained progress in emissions reduction. not just smoothing out volatility, but allowing us to ensure a move to a carbon budget framework, which was supported by the Climate Change Committee following success in the UK and in other countries. They advise that carbon budgets are the most appropriate indicator of underlying progress in emissions reduction.
I call Maurice Golden to be followed by Claire Hoggy. Mr. Golden.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The most popular option chosen during the recent Latte levy consultation was no thanks. However, I recognise that some climate change policies will not always be popular. Simple question, can the Minister tell the Chamber the estimated reduction in emissions as a result of the Latte levy?
Minister.
I will write to the member. Well, actually, I won't write to the member. Someone else will write to the member in due course with the information he seeks. But I think he's right to point to the fact that not every policy is initially popular. It's important that this Parliament consults meaningfully, listens to people, but ultimately is quite clear about the message that we have, which is that we have to reduce our carbon emissions in future, and that particular policy may well be part of it.
I call Claire Hoggy to be followed by Monica Lennon. Ms Hoggy.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The statistics show a substantial reduction in emissions from electricity generation as we realise Scotland's renewable energy potential. Can the Minister provide an update on the Scottish Government's work to promote and develop green energy projects and supply chains in Scotland?
Minister.
Our green industry strategy seeks to ensure that Scotland secures the enormous economic opportunity the transition presents in areas such as offshore wind, carbon capture, utilisations and storage and hydrogen. To support this, we are enabling manufacturing to grow and transition through our £75 million investment in the National Manufacturing Institute and investing up to £500 million over 5 years to support a highly productive offshore wind economy and leverage additional private investment in the infrastructure and manufacturing facilities critical to growing the sector. We're also supporting improvements to electricity generation and network asset management, including network charging and access arrangements that encourage the deployment and viability of renewables projects in Scotland.
I call Monica Lennon to be followed by Emma Harper.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Emissions from buildings remain largely unchanged, so the Government must go faster on switching households to clean heating sources and improve the energy efficiency of existing homes. We've seen delays with the Heat in Buildings Bill and concerns have been raised about the scope and ambition of that bill. Does the Minister agree with Citizen Advice Scotland, who say the Government must make provisions in that bill that will contribute to a reduction in fuel poverty and overall improvements in housing standards, because environmental justice must go hand in hand with social justice?
Minister.
Well, the member is quite right to make that last point about the fact that social justice, environmental justice have to go hand in hand. And indeed, as the years go by, we will see that they are, to some extent, the same thing. And I think that one of the reasons why, to answer our first point, the Government took some time to come forward with the bill was firstly because we'd had a consultation with a large number of responses that we wanted to give due account to, but also because we wanted to get it right, to make sure that we came forward with a bill which helped decarbonise Scotland but did not make people poorer.
I call Emma Harper to be followed by Mark Ruskell.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. It is crucial we continue to support climate innovation, which is supporting new jobs across our rural communities, where employment can be more precarious than elsewhere. Employment, for example, in anaerobic digestion and biogas, such as at Crocketford, where Crofthead Farm biogas and carbon removers are located, visited by the First Minister just before Christmas. So can the Minister outline how the Scottish Government is working to support emerging technologies and climate entrepreneurs across Scotland?
Minister.
Climate innovation and entrepreneurship are not just good for the planet, but the economic opportunities, as other members have talked about, are also enormous. We want to help Scottish businesses innovate at home and then export their solutions to the rest of the world. So we're very pleased that we've been able to invest in projects such as the one at Crofthead via our Scottish Industrial Energy Transformation Fund, and note the continued developments of the entrepreneurs beyond the innovation. Our enterprise agencies provide Scottish businesses with specialist advice, funding and knowledge exchange opportunities on driving up levels of productivity and innovation through net zero.
I call Mark Ruskell to be followed by Liam MacArthur.
I think today's statement shows conclusively that Scotland's emissions are now flatlining, and I'm really worried that this government has no big ideas left. There is no climate change plan that's being presented to Parliament. We don't know when that's coming. What we did have today was a car use reduction plan, a revised plan, which has no action on road user charging, despite congestion in cities like Edinburgh crippling the economy and crippling the climate. So how will the government use its remaining few months in office to support councils who do want to cut congestion, who do want to raise revenue and do want to invest that back in the solutions that can benefit ordinary people as they move around?
Minister.
Well, the member won't be too surprised to know that I don't accept entirely the premises of his question, but to try to answer it, the Scottish Government remains fully committed to delivering net zero by 2045, and our next climate change plan will set out an approach to delivering on Scotland's net zero target in a way which is just and fair for everyone, but also, as the member rightly points to, ambitious. And the forthcoming climate change plan, which will cover the period 2026 to 2040, will set out a comprehensive overview and approach not just to mitigating the existing climate change, but also to tackling the underlying problems that we have to fix by 2045.
I call Liam MacArthur to be followed by Kenneth Gibson.
Thank you. I thank the Minister for early sight of the statement. I think the statement makes clear that while progress being made, at a point where we need to be accelerating, the opposite is happening and we are slowing down in terms of progress. Scotland's progress in installing heat pumps is lagging behind the rest of the UK, and on transport, while peak rail fares have been ditched, so too has the commitment to replace polluting diesel trains by 2035. So can the Minister advise what advice he'll be offering whoever it is that he's committed to writing to Maurice Golden to step up and accelerate the progress we need to be making if we're to achieve our targets?
Minister.
I don't think there is any tradition in the Scottish Government of leaving notes in desks or anything like that, but the member makes important points around transport. Transport has proved a difficult sector to decarbonise. I think we're right in Scotland to talk about the way we've transformed the way that we generate electricity, but we have to, and we are facing up to the fact that there are other sectors, other parts of the graph, if you like, of the charts that have been released this week that are more challenging, and transport is one of them. The Scottish Government recognises that the transport sector needs to decarbonise in order for us to achieve net zero, and we're committed to doing that in a fair way.
I call Kenneth Gibson to be followed by Graeme Simpson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Despite a fall in recent years, agricultural greenhouse gas emissions for beef and dairy production remain high. It's therefore vital we adopt proven innovations that deliver immediate impacts, such as a methane-reducing feed additive Bovar, produced by DSM Firmenich in Dalry, Ayrshire, following a £300 million plus investment there. The methane impact on global warming is 80 times greater than CO2. Given that Bovar cuts methane emissions by up to 45% in beef and 30% in dairy cattle, will the Scottish Government incentivise the low-cost, highly effective rollout of methane-reducing Scottish-made feed additives such as Bovar across Scotland?
Minister.
The member is right to point to these questions. The Scottish Government recognises the significant impact of methane on global warming and the potential for innovations like methane-suppressing feed products such as Bovar to contribute to emissions reductions in the beef and dairy sectors, and we welcome the progress that is being made in that area. Officials are currently exploring the development of a pilot scheme to assess the appropriate use of methane-suppressing feed products on Scottish farms. The aim would be to support policy development and inform future decisions on the role these products might play in reducing emissions. We continue to monitor progress across the UK and internationally and are engaging with other administrations, research institutes and industry initiatives such as the UK Dairy Carbon Network to ensure our approach remains evidence-based and aligned with our net zero ambition.
I call Graeme Simpson to be followed by Willie Coffey.
Thank you. Last month, the Climate Change Committee advised that nature-based measures such as tree planting and peatland restoration could contribute 13% of emissions reductions by 2045. But that would need the rate of tree planting to more than double in the next 2 decades. So aside from one good year, would the Minister just admit that we're not going to achieve that?
Minister.
Well, there's 1.5 million hectares of woodland in Scotland. It covers 19% of our country. Due to the age structure of the forest estate, the carbon sink that I alluded to earlier on, will reduce. That's because of the age of the trees concerned over the 15 years to come. So we do need to plant more woodland. We are planting more trees. Scotland is far more effective at planting trees than other nations of the UK. 75%, I think, from memory, of the tree planting presently going on in the UK is happening in Scotland. We are proud of that record and we will continue to work on it.
I call Willie Coffey to be followed by Finlay Carson.
Thank you. Despite the restrictions of devolution, Scotland continues to lead the rest of the UK in emissions reductions, with a 50% overall reduction since 1990, as the Minister said. Does the Minister agree that Scotland would be better positioned to fight climate change if we had the same powers and financial levers that every other independent country has? And, of course, to thank him for his considerable achievements for the people of Scotland during his term in office.
Minister.
Well, despite the muttering from some quarters, I think we have plenty to learn from small European countries who have 5 million population and are independent in these issues. We seek to do that. Member rightly points out that Scotland continues to lead in emissions reduction across the UK. The reduction that I mentioned earlier on of 51.3% over this period is higher than any other nations of the UK. We don't rest on that laurel. But within the constitutional settlement we have, we do not have the powers we need to make some of the choices we would like as a country. We know it is the UK Government who continue to hold the key policy levers with regard to some of the policy areas on net zero future, including, as I mentioned several times earlier on critical areas like Acorn.
And I call Finlay Carson.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. The Scottish Government committed £80 million to the Acorn carbon capture project back in January 2022. They then said this was contingent on the UK Government funding being committed. That commitment has now been made, so when will the £80 million be spent by the Scottish Government?
Minister.
Well, we are pleased and I indicated that we are pleased that the UK Government has made commitments in this area, because Acorn is essential, as the Climate Change Committee have said, to us reaching net zero. It's essential to the economy of the North East and Grangemouth and of Scotland as a whole. So we are pleased that we took the lead in this area. We are pleased that the UK Government is following, but we do need to have a timeline from the UK Government as to when this investment will come.
Thank you, Minister. That concludes the statement on greenhouse gas emissions statistics 2023. There will be a short pause before we move on to the next item of business to allow front bench teams to change position, should they so wish. Thank you.